AI will eventually replace most human jobs. Robots will take your job, and that's a good thing. Imagine this. You're sitting at your desk. Maybe it's an office, maybe it's your home, maybe it's a factory floor, a design studio, or the front seat of a truck. The lights above you hum softly, the way they always have. The world outside your window seems normal. People walking, cars moving, emails pinging, coffee brewing. Then your phone buzzes. It's a company-wide email. And just like that, everything changes. Your position has been transitioned. Not because you underperformed, not because the company is struggling, but because the task you spent your life mastering, the one that paid your bills, that defined your worth, that gave you purpose, has been automated. No one fired you. The machine just learned how to do it better, faster, cheaper, without ever asking for a break, a raise, or a reason why. Now pause here, feel the emptiness. Not just the financial fear, but something deeper. A dislocation. Like the floor beneath your life has quietly collapsed. If you're honest, this thought has visited you before, maybe in whispers, in the headlines, in the new app that replaced a job, in the AI that writes emails, in the robot that flips burgers, in the cold efficiency of the algorithm that always knows just a little more than you. We've told ourselves we'll adapt, that humans will always be needed, that creativity and empathy are safe. But deep down, a new truth is emerging, unsettling and yet undeniable. What if the machines don't just take our jobs? What if they take the very idea of having a job? And what then? What happens when effort no longer equals reward? When our skills no longer give us safety? When our contribution is no longer required? What does it mean to live in a world where being useful is no longer necessary? Here's the paradox. The thing we fear most, being replaced, may also be the very thing that sets us free. But free to do what? To sit idle while machines build everything? To drown in comfort while meaning slips through our fingers? Or is this the beginning of something even deeper, something we've longed for, but never dared to imagine? Before we answer that, we need to understand why this fear exists. Why losing our jobs feels like losing ourselves. And for that, we need to go back, not just to economics or technology, but to the deepest chambers of the human soul. There's an old myth, one we've all heard, whether we've realized it or not. It goes something like this. The value of a person is tied to their productivity. This belief has been woven into the fabric of our society for centuries, stretching back to the dawn of industrialization. It's deeply embedded in the way we think, in the stories we tell, and in how we measure success. If you work hard, if you show up, if you put in your time, then you earn your keep, and the world will recognize your worth. But what happens when machines don't just make work easier, when they replace it altogether? What happens when the value of your labor becomes irrelevant? To understand this, we need to look deep into the psychology of work, into the roots of this myth. One of the most profound insights into the human condition comes from the existential philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. He argued that humans, unlike animals, are cursed with freedom, the ability to create meaning in an otherwise meaningless world. But in this freedom, we also face a profound tension. Who are we if we are not what we do? This existential struggle runs deep. In our culture, work is not merely a way to pay the bills, it is the way we define ourselves. What do you do? Is one of the first questions we ask each other. In that question lies an unspoken assumption that our value is directly tied to our role, our output, and our ability to contribute. But here's the disturbing truth. This myth has created an endless cycle of anxiety and self-doubt. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, understood this struggle better than most. In his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, he noted that the true human struggle is not merely about survival or achievement, but about the search for meaning. Frankl saw that when people lose a sense of purpose, when they can no longer answer the question, what am I here for? They lose the will to live. And this is the emotional and psychological weight we feel when faced with automation. We're not just losing a paycheck. We're losing our identity. We're losing the very thing we've been told defines us. For centuries, society has hammered home the idea that value equals productivity. And now machines are proving this false. The robots are not just replacing our job, they're challenging a core belief that has shaped our existence. Now imagine how this feels on a personal level. For years, you've spent your days doing something that made sense in the world. You've invested your time, energy, and skills into perfecting it. You've given yourself to the work, believing it would always be there for you. And suddenly it's not. Who are you now? The unease you feel, the fear, the confusion, the existential dread. This is not just a fear of losing a paycheck, it's the fear of losing purpose. This is where things get deeply philosophical. The myth of value through work has been so deeply ingrained in our minds that even the prospect of losing it threatens to unravel our entire sense of self. But is this really the end of the world? Or is it an opportunity to confront something deeper? You see, we are at a unique juncture in human history, a moment that will require us to let go of long-held beliefs that may no longer serve us. But to let go of something we've held so tightly for so long is not easy. We don't just need a new way to work, we need a new way to be. You've felt it, haven't you? The quiet hum of anxiety, the subtle pull of fear, the quiet questioning in the back of your mind. When machines and automation replace jobs, it's not just a cold mechanical shift in the economy. It's something more insidious, something psychological, cultural, and even existential. We've explored how the idea of work is tied to our sense of self. But there's something else lurking beneath the surface, something even more insidious. This fear, this unease, isn't just about losing a job. It's about losing the entire system that defines our lives. When the machines step in, they don't just replace our labor. They reveal how deeply we've been conditioned to value effort over being, production over presence, action over stillness. To understand this, we need to explore something called cognitive dissonance, the psychological discomfort we experience when our beliefs and reality clash. In the case of automation, we've spent years, maybe even centuries, believing in the sacredness of work. We've been told that a person's worth is defined by their contribution to society, that working hard is a virtuous thing. But when the machines start to replace us, that belief begins to crumble. Cognitive dissonance occurs when something we thought was certain is suddenly shaken. We've spent our lives building identities around these beliefs. If I work hard, I will succeed. If I do my part, I will be needed. But when automation pushes us aside, we are faced with the uncomfortable truth that the world has no inherent need for our labor anymore. The system we've trusted is breaking down. In these moments, we often do what the human mind does best. We deny or reinterpret reality to make it fit our worldview. We might say things like, "This is just a temporary change. It won't last. There will always be something else for us to do." But deep down, we know the truth. The nature of work is changing, and perhaps in ways we cannot yet fully understand. Now, this is where things get really fascinating, because it's not just an individual problem. The forces of automation are not just replacing people. They are transforming society itself. When machines take over tasks once done by humans, they introduce a kind of social displacement. As human labor becomes less central to the economy, people's roles in the social fabric are also shifting. One of the most remarkable thinkers to explore this dynamic was the economist John Maynard Keynes. In his 1930 essay, Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, he predicted that technological advances would lead to an era where human labor would no longer be necessary for survival. He foresaw a time when we could work much less, or even not at all. But here's the catch. Keynes also warned that the challenge would not be a lack of resources, it would be a lack of purpose. And here, he touched on something incredibly important. What happens when you no longer need to work for a living? How does society change when labor is no longer the central feature of life? This is where the neurological insights start to get really compelling. Our brains are wired to seek purpose, and purpose often comes through action. We find meaning in work, in purpose, in seeing the results of our efforts. But when these results are increasingly generated by machines, we find ourselves faced with the question, how do I define myself in a world where work no longer matters? It's no surprise that many of us feel lost. The collapse of this belief system, the collapse of work as a central purpose in life, creates a vacuum, and vacuums are always filled with something. If we don't learn to fill this space with meaning, with connection, with creativity, then we risk filling it with emptiness. And this emptiness, this existential void, is where we begin to see the cracks in the social contract. We live in a world where our sense of self has been shaped by an economic model that is now crumbling, and the consequences of that are profound. But there's a glimmer of hope in this chaos, because in every societal shift, in every collapse of an old system, there's the chance for a new world to be built. And the machines, these very tools we fear, might be the ones to guide us there. Now imagine waking up one day with a strange, exhilarating feeling that you've never had before. The usual fear of losing your job, of becoming obsolete, is gone. Instead, you feel a strange sense of liberation. The machines are here, yes, but now they are not the enemy. They are not the force that steals your purpose, your sense of worth. They are the catalyst for something deeper. What if the machines are not just taking your job? What if they are liberating you from it? The shift we're experiencing, the one we've been dreading, isn't just a threat, it's a kind of revolution. A revolution not of violence or chaos, but of the mind, of the soul, of how we see ourselves in this vast, ever-evolving world. This is where things get radical. If we accept that machines will take over most jobs, we are forced into a moment of profound transformation. This is our opportunity, not to scramble for a new job, but to rediscover our humanity. Think about this. The thing that makes us human, the thing that machines will never replace, is our ability to create meaning. A machine may be able to perform tasks, make decisions, or even simulate creativity. But it cannot experience the world as we do. It cannot find meaning in the small, fleeting moments of existence. It cannot see a sunset and feel the weight of it, the depth of its beauty, the rush of awe. It cannot hold a conversation with a friend and sense the warmth of connection. It cannot appreciate art or music or the complexity of human relationships. What if, instead of fearing the machines, we embraced them as partners in the greater work of being human? Being human, true human existence, is not about efficiency. It's not about grinding endlessly in the gears of a machine-driven system. It's about meaning. It's about connection. It's about creation. If we free ourselves from the myth that we must work to prove our worth, we open up an entirely new realm of possibility. Without the pressure to earn a living through work, what could we choose to do with our time? What would happen if we embraced a life of creativity, exploration, learning and connection? And not because we need money, but because we are free to. Think about artists, musicians, philosophers and writers throughout history. Many of them worked for a living, yes, but their most profound contributions came when they were not simply working for survival, when they were allowed to explore their deepest passions. What if we were all free to live like that? And here's the radical shift. This freedom doesn't come at the cost of society or humanity. In fact, it might be the very thing that saves us. When people are free to pursue their own passions, to create, to think deeply, to collaborate, that's when true innovation and progress happen. That's when societies evolve. Remember John Maynard Keynes? He predicted that automation and technology would eventually allow us to work less. But the challenge, he said, would not be technological. It would be cultural. We would need to redefine the purpose of our lives. If we can make this shift, if we can change the way we view purpose, we will open the door to an entirely new form of human flourishing. In other words, when we stop seeing work as our primary purpose, we can finally focus on what makes life worth living. We can explore meaning in ways that go beyond the shallow pursuit of survival or status. We can invest our time and energy in relationships, creativity, learning, and the kind of work that truly nourishes the soul. But it's not just about freedom from labor, it's about freedom to live. And this freedom isn't a future fantasy. It's already beginning to take shape. Think of the rise of the gig economy, remote work, and the ways technology has already begun to give us more control over our time. Think of the artists who are already using AI to push the boundaries of creativity. Think of the entrepreneurs and thinkers who are building new ways of working that allow them to explore their passions rather than simply survive. The rise of automation is challenging us to build a new world, one that doesn't revolve around constant work. And let's not forget the deeper truths that we've long known in our hearts, even if we've ignored them. The philosophers, the ones who challenged the status quo, have always known this. Think about Friedrich Nietzsche, who rejected the traditional systems of meaning and instead called for the revaluation of all values. He knew that people could only truly flourish when they stopped blindly following the rules of society and began living on their own terms. This is our chance to live like that, to revalue the way we define success, worth, and purpose, to create a new world where the machines serve us, not the other way around. The future is not one where we are enslaved by machines, but one where we are empowered by them. Here's the most profound realization that we must come to terms with. The machines are not our enemies, they are our liberators. This is the ultimate truth, the breakthrough revelation that redefines everything we thought we knew about work, purpose, and what it means to be human. For so long, we've seen technology as a threat. We've feared it, not because of what it is, but because of what it represents. It represents change. It represents a world where the old rules no longer apply, and in that we've come to the core of our fear, change itself. But let's be clear, the fear of machines replacing our jobs is not a fear of technology, it's a fear of losing the familiar, it's a fear of losing control, of not knowing where we fit into the puzzle anymore. We're terrified of being left behind in a world that moves without us. And we feel that in this ever-shifting future we will have no place. But this fear is the very thing that is holding us back. The truth is, machines and automation are only fulfilling a function that humanity has long desired. To relieve us of the mundane, the repetitive, the tiring, the soul-crushing tasks that have kept us shackled to the grind. These tasks, which once defined our existence, are not the essence of life. The essence of life, of being, is something much deeper. We were never meant to simply toil for survival. We were meant to create, to imagine, to innovate. The world that lies ahead of us is not one of endless labor, but one of endless possibility. The machines are not here to take from us. They are here to give us the freedom to live life fully, to embrace our humanity in all its complexity. We can create new systems that prioritize meaning over profit, connection over competition, and creativity over efficiency. Take a moment to imagine that a world where you are free to create, free to explore, free to be the person you were always meant to be. In this future, we don't define ourselves by our jobs. We define ourselves by our capacity for connection, for growth, for joy. And here's the truly radical thing. We don't need to wait for it. This future is already beginning to unfold. As AI, robotics, and automation take over the repetitive tasks, they give us the chance to reclaim our humanity. No longer defined by our productivity, we can pursue higher forms of work that is centered around creation, relationship, art, and exploration, work that is grounded in meaning rather than merely the need to survive. But here's the catch. This world doesn't come without effort. It's not just going to happen on its own. We have to embrace this shift consciously. We need to change our mindset, our approach to life, and our sense of self. We have to let go of the old myth that our value comes from how much we work. That's the old story, and it's time for a new one. In the words of Carl Jung, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In a world where the machines take care of the tasks that once defined us, we have the incredible privilege of becoming something more. We can become the creators, the thinkers, the artists, the lovers, the dreamers we were always meant to be. And it's in this newfound freedom that we will discover our true potential. The potential to build not just for survival, but for joy, for meaning, for connection. But here's the final, most powerful realization. We are not defined by what we do, but by who we are. That's the final shift we need to make. The moment we let go of the belief that we must work in order to live, in order to prove our worth, is the moment we step into a whole new world. It is the moment we embrace the future, not with fear, but with excitement. The moment we realize that we were never meant to work forever, but to create forever. So ask yourself this: who are you when you no longer need to work for survival? In this moment, when work is no longer the primary purpose of your life, the world becomes full of endless possibilities, and you get to decide what to do with them. You get to be free. And with that, we reach the end of our journey. The world of automation, AI, and robots is no longer something to fear. It's a gift that allows us to break free from old systems, to rethink what it means to live, to create, and to be human. As we look ahead, we can choose to embrace this new reality, to find meaning in places we never thought possible. The future is here. The robots have arrived. But instead of fearing them, let's choose to embrace them as the partners they are. The future is ours to shape, and it starts now.